Hey y'all, this is Ryan. I wanted to make a quick video just kind of going over all these steps because I know it might be a little overwhelming about this pro-con argumentative writing. So I'm going to try to do this as concisely as possible, starting with day 25, which is Tuesday. So basically what we're doing, guys, is we're trying to answer this question, should zoos exist? It's a super simple question, but it's pretty deep. So on Tuesday, we have a bunch of these links, and my goal here is just for you to investigate what some of the evidence is. These resources are really brief and really concise, but that's good. There's a lot of arguments for, the pros are the for, and the con is against. So my objective here was just to give you a really clear space to take some notes. I've looked at some of the student work, and a lot of you guys did great. The goal was to have that work done by the end of the day Tuesday, so that you can start thinking about your argument Wednesday, the second day. So let me show you what 26 looks like. Okay, so the next day 26 is where we start to plan our writing, and I think everyone's done an argumentative essay. It's basically where you try to argue a side, you try to convince the reader of something. So for you, your argument is either going to be yes, I mean, quite simply, your argument's going to be yes, zoos should exist or they should not exist. Or maybe you're in the middle and maybe there's like in some cases they should exist. And that's okay. It doesn't always have to be one side or the other. So I have a bunch, like I said over here, I have a bunch of graphic organizers we're going to get to later and sentence stems that are really helpful. But step one of Wednesday is I just want to kind of refresh your brain about what is an argumentative essay. And like I said, it just is where it takes a stance on an issue. It attempts to persuade the reader. And the big thing about argumentative writing is that you persuade your reader not by just saying your opinion, but it's all about stating your claim or your opinion and then backing it up with some evidence. So these are 4 different resources I've given you to kind of explore and refresh what argumentative writing is all about. I was hoping to find a really good YouTube video from another teacher, but guys, they're not out there. They're pretty rough. This is the best one I found that wasn't like super deep and in detail. This is like a 5-minute video, kind of a teacher going over like what an argumentative essay is, like the parts of it. This is another one I really like, the structure of an argumentative essay. It's don't get turned off by like the length of it, but it's kind of like an article that very clearly kind of goes through like the parts. And then the thing I like about this the best is it has these visuals right here. So if you're a visual kind of thinker, like this is an essay right here, and they use colors and symbols and these lines to kind of show like how your information flows. So for example, like the intro paragraph is the green stuff, and then developing your argument, like the bulk of your paper is going to be kind of this purple and red stuff. So I really like this. It's straightforward. So even if you just skim this article and like look at the visuals, I think that would be really helpful. The big things to know here are like understanding what's a claim and then what's evidence. Because if I make a claim and say Coke is better than Pepsi, but I don't give you any evidence, that's just my opinion. And that kind of flows into this little triangle here. You might have seen this in another class like Molly's. These are like the 3 classic styles of persuasion: ethos, pathos, and logos. And basically, they're the 3 main ways you can convince someone. So quite simply, like ethos is like if I cite someone who's an authority or has a lot of credibility as liking Coke over Pepsi, that might be convincing to the reader. Another way I might convince the reader is to use like logic or reason or rationality or like facts and statistics. So I might, for example, cite a survey where more Americans preferred Coke over Pepsi and point to that as like evidence that, well, if more people in the survey liked Coke over Pepsi, of course it's better. They're the same price. I mean, why else would someone choose Coke over Pepsi? There's no other like reason. And then pathos is another strategy that's really great, where you kind of like, the way I like to say this is it's like you pull on people's heartstrings. So if you can like think of like a sappy commercial you've seen recently where like people were asking you to donate money, these are commercials that always rely on pathos, like helping someone out. And for the zoo, this might be a really strong one about like maybe showing the really positive side of zoos, like kids laughing and learning, or maybe a negative side of zoos, to kind of like get to people's heart. So it's almost like pathos is about your heart, um, and logos is about your head, your thinking. So then after you've kind of like feel like you're pretty good about what is an argumentative essay, you can check out as many of these as you want. If you start one and you're not into it, go on to the next one. And you're going to have this paper in front of you, but the way you get to these is you're going to go to Google Classroom, and you're just going to go to day 26, and you're just going to click through the links right there. There's lots of links, so I didn't want to bury too many, but everything is all hyperlinked right here. And then the next step is we want to start planning our writing. So I'll give you this graphic organizer on blue paper. That was my favorite one I found, because it's simple and it's kind of big picture. But this is where you kind of like, once you've done your research, you start to lay out your writing. So you don't have to do this top to bottom, and filling this out in order doesn't really matter. But the goal is to, like, before you even start writing, if you can have all these things, at least a rough idea of what you want to say, um, this is like the next step of our writing. So if you look up here, the introduction is pretty straightforward. You might like catch the reader's attention, kind of introduce them to the topic of zoos, and they may not know that there's like a controversy over zoos, or they may not know all the cool things that zoos do for animals and for people, and conservation. So you may need to tell the reader that. And then here is going to be your claim, like what's your stance? And your claim is where you answer that question: should zoos exist? And then down here, what you want to do is you want to figure out like what are your 3 best arguments to make. And these boxes aren't big, and that's intentional. So you just want to write your claim real quick here. What's your argument? What's like some good evidence to support it? And then down here, the counterclaim and rebuttal is basically if someone disagreed with you, what would they say? What would be their counterclaim? And then how would you rebut them? Like, how would you tell them, okay, you may think that, but this is why you're wrong? And that's basically where we're headed today. If you finish this, the very next step is going to be to grab one of these claim, evidence, and reasoning graphic organizers from the side table. And basically each of these is going to turn into a paragraph, like a body paragraph. So you're going to have like your very basic claim right here, but this isn't a paragraph, and we're going to build it out using one of these. So this is another organizer that you can use. There's also these sentence stems that like literally help you get started. Usually the claim comes early in the sentence, and then after that comes the evidence and then the reasoning. So there's a reason to this sequencing. And then there's also these sentence starters that I hope will help you get started with your writing. So guys, I hope this helps. If you have any questions, I'll be back tomorrow, which is Thursday, and we'll get cruising on this.